Year 4, hope you're all right and that you're enjoying the sunshine. It's beautiful today. It's not particularly warm where I am, but it's dry and it's sunny, so that's nice. I've been in the garden this morning on my laptop doing a bit of work, sending a few emails and seeing some of your pictures that you've been doing. When has everyone started cooking and at what point? I've seen unicorn cakes, I've seen homemade scones, I've seen donuts. Someone in our class has been baking donuts and they look absolutely delicious. It's just making me really hungry. So I feel like next time I go to the shop and I have to go and buy some food, I'm going to be buying really unhealthy things thanks to all of you. So thank you very much for that, Year 4. Next time you see me in real life, I'm going to be really, really heavy. But I have been doing my boxing and I've been going for a run. Last week, I ran a half marathon. I was due to be running one in June, but obviously because everything's been cancelled or delayed, I decided to do it a little bit early. So I did it a couple of days ago. I did the half marathon. So I was chuffed about that because I managed to do it in a good time for me. I've never ran before. I've only been running for 2 months. So I was chuffed. If you've done anything, any extra achievements, I know as you have sent some emails, some of you have done some really amazing things since you've been off. If you've done anything that you're particularly proud of, like I am with doing my half marathon, or I know people or children in our class have been practicing kick-ups and are doing really well with those, learning to ride the bikes. If you've got anything that you think particularly that you want to share with the class, please let me know so I can put it on Facebook so then the rest of the class can see. Because even though we're not in school, I think it's still really important that we share what we've been doing. Okay, Miss Hazeldine, stop talking now. I'm going to start reading. So we're on page 129 and it's at the bottom. We should call this place Base Camp, Bertolt suggested as he pushed a circular coffee table into the middle of the floor. That's what you call the camp on a mountainside just before you get to the top. Darkus was rearranging shelves in a metal unit to make a wall. Base Camp, he tried out the name. That's good. Look at all this amazing stuff I've found. Virginia came through the door with an armful of goodies, which she unloaded onto the sofa. A telescope for spying, an oil lamp, some string, always useful, a mirror and a car battery. This is nice. Bertolt picked up the brass telescope and peered down it. We could use it to see into the Emporium. They don't call him Einstein for nothing, Virginia teased. I wonder if Pickering and Humphrey got into the bedroom last night, Darkus said. He'd been worrying about the Beatles all day. That armchair is really heavy, and I wedged it under the handle so they could turn it. We could take the telescope and find out. Virginia grabbed it out of Bertolt's hands. Darkus nodded, looking about. We've pretty much got the camp built now. Bertolt shrugged. OK. They made their way through their newly constructed tunnels to a lookout post in line with what appeared to be Humphrey and Pickering's kitchen window up on the top of the floor. Ooh, look at that. Bertolt pointed at a languishing crystal chandelier poking out of a suitcase. Can we bring that back to base camp on our way back? Virginia had climbed up on top of a tall chest of drawers and poked the telescope through a hole in the tarpaulin. I can see one of them in the kitchen, she whispered. He's putting his coat on. She turned round. Do you think he's going out? We could go round the front and check, Darkus suggested. Virginia shimmied back down the chest of drawers. Go, 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 or we'll miss him. The three of them scrambled over to a ladder they'd strapped to the wall. Scaling it and dropping down to the other side, they ran through Uncle Max's flat and out onto the street. Looking up and down, they could see no sign of the neighbours, so they pelted across the road and burst into the empty laundrette, throwing themselves on the ground behind the row of machines in the window. There he is, Darkus said, breathless, pointing across the street. That's the skinny one. His name's Pickering. Virginia and Bertolt peered over the top of a washing machine as a tall, bony man dressed in tatty Mackintosh emerged from the door beside the boarded-up shop and scurried away up the street. Darkus suddenly remembered that in a moment of blind panic he'd told Pickering he lived next door. He hoped Pickering still believed he was lying, or had forgotten what he'd said. He was about to tell Virginia and Bertolt when the grey door opened again. He grabbed them and pulled them down behind the machine. "That's the other one," he whispered. "That's Humphrey." "He's ginormous," Bertolt gasped, peeping through a gap in the machines. Humphrey plodded off in the opposite direction to Pickering. "I know," Darkus agreed. "He's the one that said he wanted to put me in a pie." "Wait," Virginia looked at him. "If they're both out, surely now is a good time to meet the beetles and see the mountain." Bertolt swallowed. Isn't that breaking and entering?" "Only if we break something," Darkus said, grinning at Virginia. "We're not going to steal anything, and if we're quick, we can be out of there before they get back," Virginia tried to reassure Bertolt. "It's dangerous," Bertolt pointed out. "Danger is my middle name." "No, it isn't," Bertolt muttered, fidgeting nervously with a loose thread hanging from his blazer cuff. "It's Winifred." "Come on, Bertolt," Darkus said. "I swear you've never seen anything like this before, and it might help my dad." Bertolt gave the tiniest of nods with the unhappiest of faces. "That's the window," Darkus pointed up through the branches of the sycamore tree. "We need to climb up to the branch opposite and jump in." He looked at his shoulder. "Baxter, you can fly up." "I'm still not sure about this," Bertolt clutched Virginia. "I'm not very good with heights." "Don't you want to see?" Bertolt nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but what's the worst that could happen? We get in there and it turns out that there are only a handful of ordinary beetles in a teacup." "No," Bertolt looked sombre. "We fall and break our necks, or get caught, or end up in prison. If we get caught, we'll tell the police we were trying to rescue Darkus. They kidnapped him, remember? We'll be heroes." "What if we get kidnapped? Look, they're out, and if they come back, we can be out of the window and down here in seconds," Darkus reassured him, swinging up into the tree and leaning back down to offer Virginia a helping hand. She scoffed at him, wrapping her hands around the lowest branch and walking her feet up the trunk until she could flip into a sitting position beside him. They looked down at Bertolt, who was jumping up and down, trying and failing to reach the branch. Virginia and Darkus both leant down, each grabbing hold of one of his hands, and pulled him up beside them. "Thanks." Bertolt pushed his glasses up his nose and gave them an apologetic smile. Darkus went ahead, climbing up to the branch opposite Humphrey's room, and launched his body into the window. The beetles were hidden away inside their mountain, with only the odd hind leg or antenna visible, and he was relieved to see the pink armchair was still wedged against the door. "Hello," Darkus whispered, picking himself up off the floor. "I'm back." Baxter landed gently on his shoulder. He could hear quiet scufflings and chitterings as the other beetles began emerging from their mountain. "Move over." Virginia was crouching on the window ledge. "This window is swarming with ladybirds." "I might just stay here." Bertolt was clinging to the branch. "Come on." Virginia reached out, and Bertolt hurled himself into her arms, knocking them both through the window and onto the floor. "Sorry," Bertolt whispered. "I'm at a height disadvantage when it comes to trees." "It's dark in here." Virginia looked about. "There isn't a light," Darkus replied, pointing up at the bulbless fitting dangling from the ceiling. "I wish I'd brought my torch." A gentle buzzing noise answered him, and thousands of tiny flickering yellow lights floated up to the ceiling. "Wow!" Darkus looked up. "Peeny wellies!" Virginia gasped. "Peeny what?" Darkus asked. "Fireflies," Virginia said, her eyes shining. "Our very own starlight." "Fireflies!" Bertolt echoed. "Now they're beautiful." "Welcome to Beetle Mountain." Darkus proudly stepped over to the towering mound, enjoying the expressions on Virginia's and Bertolt's faces as hundreds of beetles poked their heads out of their cups. Baxter flew up and landed on the butterfly bush. Those are big beetles. Virginia moved to take a closer look. Freeze! Darkus pointed. Look down. The floor in front of her feet might have looked like carpet, but it was, Darkus knew, a live tapestry of beetles, weaving in and out of each other. What do I do? She asked Darkus. Darkus knelt down. Please, can you let my friend through? He asked politely. The beetles at Virginia's feet drew back, parting to create a path. Amazing, she laughed with delight, stepping up gingerly behind him. Darkus pointed out the beetles in the cups, discovering that some of them housed beetle larvae too. He spotted traces of cranberry juice in several cups and was mesmerised by the turquoise and caramel mould growths springing up between the various pieces of crockery. He resisted the urge to poke them, but noticed that different types of beetle furnished their cups with different things, like twigs or water or even an old sock. My brother Sean is going to die when I tell him about this, Virginia said, peering into the cups. Look, an elderberry beetle. She pointed at the black beetle with an absurdly long antennae and elytra that had a rim of bright gold. These are seriously endangered species. Oh, and there's a stag beetle and an oil beetle. This room should be a conservation zone. Guys, Bertolt's voice had shot up. Help, he squeaked. Relax. We'll hear the front door go if they come back, Darkus said. No, look. Bertolt rolled his eyes up to the ceiling. Beetle! I know, Virginia smiled up at the fireflies. Aren't they stunning? No! Bertolt wailed. On my head! Wowzers! What is that? Virginia exclaimed. It's enormous! Is it? Bertolt looked like he might faint. Resting on his white blonde curls was the enormous zebra-striped beetle. It's all right, Darkus smiled. It's a Goliath. I met him yesterday. He won't hurt you. Get it off me, Bertolt pleaded. I think that's exactly how I would handle having a beetle on my head. Gently, Darkus held his hand against Bertolt's forehead, and the huge beetle crawled onto it. Bertolt slumped against the wall with his eyes closed, sighing with relief, until he opened them again and found a cluster of mint green lavender beetles feeding off a tea splatter right in front of his nose. He sprang back with a shriek. Virginia tutted. Stop being so jumpy or you'll squash someone. Come on, surely you're smart enough to see how amazing these guys are. Bertolt looked down, shamefaced. Sorry. Oh, look! Dung beetles, Virginia pointed. Oh no, yuck, Bertolt grimaced. Look what they're pushing. Darkus saw a brown cricket ball roll out of a hole in the skirting board, steered by 2 bronze beetles. One beetle was working heroically hard, walking in a kind of handstand and pushing the ball with his hind legs, whilst the other was pretending to help, but really sitting on top getting a free ride. Do you think it's human poo? Bertolt asked. What other kinds of poo do you think they have around here? Virginia chuckled at Bertolt's horror. Oh, come on, we all do it, and if beetles didn't get rid of it, we'd probably all be wading round in it. She looked around the room, taking in the dirty armchair, the axe and the wooden chair with ropes wound around its legs. Everything you said was true, she said to Darkus. I thought you said you believed me. I did, sort of. She shook her head in wonder. But this is bonkers. I know, he nodded. These beetles are like no beetles I've ever seen before. He gently placed the Goliath beetle on the mountain. And they need our help. They're in danger. Baxter dropped down from the butterfly bush and crawled to the Goliath beetle, his antennae flicking in silent conversation. But, Virginia shook her head, beetles don't have a hive mentality. They don't behave in the way you're talking about, working together. Maybe these ones do. He looked at his friends. Something important is happening in this room. I don't know what it is exactly, but I know we have to protect these beetles. It's what Dad would do. I'm going to stop there for today on page 139. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon. Bye.